There's got to be a better way to do presentations than PowerPoint, but we haven't discovered what that is yet. All right, close this. So I can't talk and click at the same time.
Don't talk and click at the same time.
Do not do it. Don't multitask. You'll regret it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. We learned all about that this week. All right. Let's see. Do we have any familiar people? I'm going to start calling our repeaters our good friends. Oh, our good friend Brian's here. Thank you for joining us again. Our good friend Harsha is here. Welcome back. Heidi Hatch, that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, is there anybody on the line who, apart from Harsha and Brian, who we've identified that has been with us before at a previous webinar? I'm going to take that silence as everyone else has been with us before. That's exciting. Thank you.
Give them 7 seconds.
Not really. I'm the first time I hear. So this is my
welcome.
first.
Yeah, I'm also the first time here. I'm from Pakistan. I'm also the first.
I'm also first time here.
Right. It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. People opening up.
Did you love you?
Exciting, yeah. We're happy to have you.
Great. All right. So just before we jump into the content, so for the new timers, how we like to run these. First of all, my name is Jill, and my co-host Danny. We're the Regis and Kelly of Agile Webinars. Anyway, we like to keep these pretty informal. If you have questions or thoughts or you don't agree, please just interrupt and say, hey, Jill, hey, Danny, actually, here's my perspective. I think we learn so much more when we're hearing from more than just 2 people. And there you go. Anything else to add, Daniel?
Yeah, this is, as Jill said, very interactive, so please feel free to speak up. You can unmute yourself at any time. You can have your camera on. You can speak up audibly if you like, but you may have just noticed that I posted hello everyone in the chat window here. So you're also welcome to pose any questions if you like in the chat. I'll be monitoring it throughout the webinar, and we'll bring any questions up. If you do not speak up vocally, I'll be happy to read them out for you.
All right, fantastical. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so again, my name is Jill Stott. Daniel Junod. How do you say your name?
Yeah, Junod is how we say it. If we wanted to be fancy, we could say Junot, but
Junot,
yes,
Junot like Chile. So we work for NextUp Solutions, and we are a training organization. And here are some upcoming classes if you're interested. We have some great deals going on right now. We are doing everything virtual due to the COVID, and we've had amazing response, positive response with our virtual training, saying this is interactive as our in-person classes. So we're super excited. So right after this or during it, go ahead and check out the options and see if there's a time that works for you. All right, so this is the words. What is Agile at scale? So we're going to talk about, there's 2 basically interpretations of Agile at scale. So one of them, that's probably the one that you're most familiar with, is scaling up, or SCUP. Danny came up with that nice acronym.
Well, it's a variation of Scout, right?
Correct. Yes, you're going to see a lot of acronyms that we invented. Feel free to use them, liberally in your own organizations, but give us credit. So, scaling up is when I have a bunch of people, more than just a couple of teams, who are all working collectively on the same solution. So, I'm going to call these the team level, right? They're still functioning like little speedboats, and then the team of teams. Some people call them a train or whatever, a scrum of scrums. We call it a tot because it's funny.
Trademark pending, right?
Yes. And then the other flavor would be scaling out or scout. Yeah. So if you're going to scout, it would be like, okay, cool. Agile's awesome. We are going to implement it in one of our areas of expertise, and then our plan is to roll it out to the whole company, even if you're in different areas or specialties other than IT. Boop. All right, so now we're to our do's and don'ts. So we've got 5 do's and don'ts. And if you have more to add, please let us know. So number 1, do scale up only if needed. Do add additional overhead only as needed. This seems obvious, but we'll talk a little bit more about why that's important. And don't just scale up for scaling's sake. We don't want to add additional waste. We don't want to add new roles necessarily, or meetings that aren't adding value. Boop, boop. My mouse has been really sensitive this week. Mousy. So I've heard some people think, oh, you know, I want to do or switch to a scaled framework because that means we're more agile, right? And we're more advanced agile, which isn't necessarily the case. So in this cartoon, well, I guess it's not a cartoon. What would this be called, Danny?
This could be a meme. This is a meme.
A meme. Oh, meme. Oh, sure. So in this meme, you know, sometimes, hey, we should just go full on board and do the whole enchilada and do all this scaling stuff that we've heard about. Maybe that's not the best approach.
Yeah, Ohm says, do not scale up unless you're doing Scrum well. Scaling
Oh, yes, thank you. That is fantastic. A lot of people, they come into a waterfall organization and say, okay, we're going to do all this scaling, and the teams don't even know how to do Scrum, right? And it's like, oh, it makes for such a longer transition period when we're not doing Scrum, at least to some kind of standard. Good point. Thank you. All right, so we created these little some questions you can ask yourself. Okay, should we scale or should we add additional scaling practices? So let's suppose you have, actually, let's let the PowerPoint do the talking, right? So first of all, here's some questions. So first of all, ask yourself, hey, do we consistently have more demand than we have capacity? So maybe you're working with 2 teams and you're thinking, dude, we have all this other work we could be doing and we want to get that done in a shorter time frame. Maybe it would make sense to hire additional people to work on this product. So if that's the case, the next question you might want to ask is, all right, cool beans, are we already practicing the lean agile techniques to maximize our productivity, removing those pieces of waste? And kind of like you said earlier, are we already doing agile well? So we're optimizing our proficiency. If we think we're doing that pretty good, cool. Next question. Do we really feel strongly that adding more people, we won't just be creating more stuff or more crap faster? How's that? That people don't want. We are confident that as we add more things quickly, we'll get the return on it as well. So any questions or thoughts on those determination points, whether you should scale or not?
Yeah, well, and Ohm says another good point, which is valuable in that scaling magnifies everything, good and bad. So intentionality is really important, right? In making that decision, trying to recognize how it will affect all aspects, and being prepared.
I love that. What's analogy for a good analogy? Think of one, Danny. He's really good at analogies.
Scaling magnifies everything, good and bad. Well, let's say you're doing your morning routine, and you take a look at your mirror, and you know those 2-sided mirrors. One has the magnifying, the bigger glass, and one is just a traditional looking glass. If you're not ready for the magnified mirror, you're going to see all the good and bad, right? So
somebody stop him.
No, but you know what I mean. It will recruit.
No.
So if
I love that.
if you haven't taken a shower, if you haven't done some grooming, you're probably going to see all the good and bad in that magnified mirror.
Thank you. That could work.
It works as an analogy.
All right, so let's suppose you already have a lot of people. Maybe you've got 50 people who are working on a given solution. And you get to the point where, okay, maybe we want to add some additional infrastructure, maybe some different roles potentially or practices in order to help those different people collaborate better. So here's some questions you could ask. Hey, first of all, are we missing any quality and delivery expectations because the teams aren't aligned? When we get so big, sometimes this team has no idea what's going on versus this team, and there's a lot of delay potentially, or when we go to integrate, it's a big mess, and so we miss our deadlines and things like that. So if that's the case, again, you can say, hey, are the team members struggling to see the bigger picture? This happens a lot when we start to add a bunch of people to a project, but we don't have any infrastructure to make sure that everyone's aligned to the common goal. So if that's the case, then you might want to think about adding some scaling practices. All right. So do start small. So they, okay, cool, we're going to add a few scaling practices. Here's what I recommend, and tell me if any of you think otherwise. I think you should start small with the minimum, and then keep scaling or adding more as it makes sense, as you're getting value from it. And I'm going to propose, don't implement scaled agile in one big blitz and then say, hey, we're done. So if you're scaling out, if you decide, hey, we want the whole organization to do some flavor of Agile so we can reap the benefits across the entire company. So I suggest you do it incrementally. What do you mean by incrementally, Danny?
Incrementally would be one small step at a time, intentional step at a time, not just sort of forcing it into all aspects of the operation, but doing little chunks at a time.
Exactly. It's kind of the Agile way, right, everyone? So typically you want to start with maybe even one single team and educate them with Agile, have them get on their way, and then vet that out. See, hey, what's working, what's not working, and optimize that, and then start rolling it out across. And for two reasons. One, you want to fix any misconceptions right at the beginning, and then they can also serve as those cheerleaders for the rest of the team. Hey, you know, we were like, oh, we don't want to do this. But then once we got into it, here's the value that we're seeing. And you'll get better buy-in as you roll this across your organization. And then, of course, continually adapting. Hey, we're lessons learned. Each time we implement this in a different segment of our company, we learn new things. Like, okay, the stuff we did in IT, when we rolled it into marketing, we had to make some modifications. It didn't fit perfectly, and that's okay. We're Agile. We're going to make some adaptations. Over here, I say the low-hanging fruit. So what do you think as far, let's go back to this slide real quick. Where'd it go? Oh, never mind. Anyway, the different organizations, what do you think one is the hardest potentially looking at finance, marketing, sales, HR would be to adapt Agile in your experiences?
Non-IT.
Non-IT, absolutely. Anything that's non-IT, because Agile was, as you all know, was originally conceived as for software development specifically.
Couple of suggestions in the chat: HR and finance.
That's what I think too, especially finance. That's the one that is, I don't know if anyone's figured out how to switch finance, because it's such a very different discipline. But even if you can introduce a few techniques to improve your efficiency, you know, limit work in process, things like that, that would still move the needle and help you be more efficient throughout your organization. All right, now if we're scaling up or
Scupping. Yeah.
You're scupping.
Yeah, we're scupping.
Again, the same concept. So start with this is my opinion, start with the least amount of infrastructure. When you realize, oh my goodness, we're not all aligned within this big solution train that we're building. And let's add some more, maybe some more meetings that align us. Let's add some events that are for the entire talk. And then as you go along, keep adding on as it makes sense. And again, the whole Deming cycle, right? Plan, do, examine, and then adapt. Questions and thoughts about these concepts? Or counterpoints? Silence means consent, right, Danny?
That's right.
That's what my boss told me 20 years ago. All right, number 3, do create small cross-functional feature teams. Don't put everyone on one giant team. And don't create teams based on their organizational alignment or on their specialty. So Danny's going to speak to this slide, right?
Yeah. I mean, the concept of more, not necessarily being more, and taking into consideration when you are scaling up or scaling out, not wanting to go too fast, because you will end up with additional waste. And as Om said, it magnifies the good and the bad. So, for instance, when we look at the tot, our tot image there, team of teams, we see those speedboats. Well, they're very specialized tools, and they have a very certain purpose of getting from point A to point B very quickly. And if that's the overall goal, then we probably don't need a giant yacht. And what comes with a giant yacht is the potential for a lot of waste. You've got a lot more things to consider. The folks on that boat, they're going to need to eat and sleep. So the opportunity to over prepare or to not be as accurate in like, for instance, the kitchen manager trying to determine how much food to order between ports is a much more tricky situation than someone who's in the speedboat. They don't need to think about a meal. So that sense of streamlining and knowing how big to be and for what purpose.
Absolutely, thank you. So precisely, so if we had 150 people that we needed to fulfill our delivery goals, and we put them on all one giant team, it really increases the complexity, like Danny said. And if I've got 150 people trying to coordinate, even come up with an estimate or groom the backlog, it's going to take forever. There's going to be so much miscommunication and so much wasted time misunderstanding each other, or just not even talking to each other. And you think, oh, we're going to be more aligned because we're all on this cruiser, but it tends to do the opposite.
Right. Just think about that, right? And then we're all on line. We're on the same mission. We want to have a good time on this giant boat. But using the yacht analogy here, hey, we're all going to have a lot of fun, but what does fun mean for everybody? I want to go see the lounge performer in the main hall. And then, my friend Charlie wants to go tan on the deck. Two different types of enjoyment, but it's still the same mission.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, and it's a lot harder to pivot a team of 150 people, just like this yacht. So what we want to do is, I call them these little speedboats, and we get a collection of speedboats, and they're all aligned to the same goal. But each team has its own, they're self-organized. Right? They have a small team, maybe it's 5 people, and they can be super agile and pivot on a dime. And as long as they're aligned to the overarching goal and we have the right infrastructure, it will be a lot more successful if you have a taut team of teams versus one big team. I stole this from, what's that guy's name? Elon Musk's son's name. That's how you pronounce, that's how you spell it. It's called One Big Team. Like that.
I did not know that. You learn something new every day.
Blows your mind, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So here is another thing to do, is to create cross-functional teams. What is a cross-functional team? Who can define that for us?
You've got all the skills necessary to do something within the team.
Yep, exactly. Ideally, we want to have most of our teams built up of, hey, whatever skill sets I need to get something from beginning to done, I want that on the team. I don't want to have all these interdependent teams, because it's going to slow down how quickly you can get things done. If I put all of my developers on one team and all my QA on another team and designers on another team, then you have all these handoffs, and your lead time is going to get huge just by nature, and there'll be a lot of confusion and then some missed opportunities. So the analogy here, and this was Danny's analogy, is if you're playing, yes, see, he's the analogy king. is our chessboard, right? We have each one of these, what are they called? Pieces? I'm not a chess. Pieces. I was going to say players, but I guess they don't play. They have their own little specialty, right? But they work collectively in order to achieve their goal. If I had only one board where I had all the pawns, another board where I had all the knights, and then we were trying to work towards this common goal, it's going to take forever and not be as efficient.
Yeah,
Anything to add on that?
As Angelina says in the chat, actually, yeah, you know, talking about cross-functional teams, people with different from different groups with different skill sets, and that's exactly right. As we look at this chess analogy, you know, you're trying to capture that king. You need folks that are able to do different things. You know, a pawn being able to be direct and straightforward, but it's helpful that a knight can move in the direction that they can, and that they're an expert in that strategy. And so yeah, so that just really illustrates that. If you have all of one piece, it's well, then you just got a game of checkers, and that's not as engaging, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, we'll have to work on that analogy with the checkers next time.
Yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah.
Oh, missed opportunity. Number 4. All right, so this is according to us. I would love to hear other opinions from this group. Do match the team, so at the team level, match the Agile framework to the type of nature of work that individual team is doing. I propose don't make all the teams conform to one single team level framework. So let me show you the picture. So sometimes you might say, okay, everybody on the individual teams, they're going to practice Scrum. Okay, that might be great for the majority of your teams, but you might have say an operations team where that just doesn't fit, right? Maybe they're covering the bases, like the shirt is kind of doing its job, but it's just an ill-fitting framework for that particular type of work. So I would like to propose that we talk to the teams and they decide, hey, what would make the most sense? Would Scrum be the best for our team? Or maybe Kanban would be better for our team? Or maybe we want to do a combination of both. And for 2 things. First of all, it'll be a better fit and they'll be actually more productive. And it kind of is empowering too, to say, hey, here's a couple of different frameworks you can choose from. What do you think would fit your needs the best? And then you're saying, but Jill, how are they going to be aligned if one's doing Kanban, they don't have sprints, and the Scrum team does? That's where the scaling practices come in. You put in intentional alignment points where, hey, after every 2 weeks, you know, we have a 30-minute meeting to make sure everyone's on the same page to see if there are questions or concerns or dependencies that we didn't know about. And it works just fine. What are some opinions on this? Am I wrong? Am I right? Am I up in the night? Hey, that rhymed.
You made a good point about putting in those additional practices to ensure there's alignment. That on the negative side, if I can put it that way, is that you have less freedom to move team members from one team to another if they're practicing different frameworks.
Potentially. Thank you, Om. That could be a concern, something to think about. If you do, hopefully you're not moving people around a lot, but it does give you a little bit less flexibility potentially. Thank you. What else?
The team dependency should be increased, because in the Scrum is doing a time boxing, whereas Kanban is doing the work boxing kind of thing. So that when we want to integrate the increments, so won't the dependency will be increased from one team with another?
Yes, that is true. So if in Scrum you're doing the 2-week sprints, there needs to be some type of alignment. So I've actually done this with quite a few organizations where we did have 1 or 2 Kanban teams, and we worked it out where they were still plugged in. But you're right, there is a risk that our Kanban teams are off here. Oh, I don't know what's happening. What's the plan? So you definitely want to have those alignment meetings when it makes sense throughout the release cycle, if you will. Thank you, Sanjoy. Anything else on this? Because I'm intrigued with different perspectives.
This is Brian. I would say that my experience has been, I've seen a lot of different things that you generally don't, whenever you try and force something, it's not the best way. Over time, things will naturally go where they need to go because it's an issue. If you have issues with alignment, it will naturally go to, we need to align more of our practices. So that's just my take.
I like that. I like that. It's kind of like an evolution, right? When people are, on the same page as far as here's the goals we want to meet, and they're collaborating and talking to each other. All right. Anything else to add, Daniel-san?
No, not at present. I mean, I think that is a great point about making sure that there is a communication between the different the different tools that folks are using, but nothing on top to add.
Thanks, sir. All right, number 5. So we've been talking about, hey, add these scaling practices, and you're like, well, what do you mean? Let's get into some specifics. So you want to, like we just said on the last slide, we want to establish a cross-team communication strategy. It's on a regular cadence. It's not just when there's an emergency, all hands on deck, right? We want to have this planned in to keep them aligned so we don't drift too far apart, and then when we go to get back together and integrate, it's a train wreck. And don't just assume, like I've heard a lot of coaches say, you know what, let's just figure it out. Just figure it out. It's cool. We're all, immature adults. But in my experience, that's not the case, right? We're so focused on what our team is doing. It's really hard to just, I'm just going to go call so-and-so and arrange this meeting. That generally doesn't happen. If it is happening, kudos. That's fantastic. I just haven't seen that be that easy. So what are some practices that you would want to consider adding to your scaled environment? 1, a shared backlog. So there's 2 points to this. Let me clarify. If each team can't see the other's backlogs, what they're working on, they're going to be misaligned. I remember we used to do this a long time ago. We all had these different backlogs. I couldn't see other people's, and I would be like doing testing. Like, when did that feature come in? Like, I don't even know where this feature came from. It was just so like isolated from the rest of the entire group. So you want to have, whether it is all in one and you don't divide it, or like when we used to do SAFe, we would have, each team would have a backlog, but in our Rally tool, it all rolled up into one big backlog. So at any time I could see the big picture, or I could drill down and say, oh, here's my team stuff. So that's important to think about. That automatically creates some synergy and alignment, having that structure that way. And then some type of taught level release / sprint planning / backlog grooming. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. It might not make sense to have everyone together in sprint planning every 2 weeks. That would be overkill. Maybe you have certain representatives come and they're meeting with your product owner to pick the next items of work. Or maybe instead of doing that, you decide, hey, maybe on a regular cadence, whether it be every couple months or whatever works best for you, we do have a meeting where we align, we review the work, their product owners are showing us, here's what's coming up, so we have an idea of the roadmap and then any modifications. Also, we want to give everyone a chance to have an opinion or to share their opinion and voice any concerns, so we can make those updates to the plan quickly, not at the last minute when it's too late. And of course, feedback loops. What's a feedback loop? What's an example of feedback loop in Scrum, for example?
Retrospect.
Yeah, exactly. Retrospect. What are we trying to achieve in a retrospective?
Share the lessons learned.
Yes, lessons learned, absolutely. What can we do better? Hey, we're killing it, but there's some things that are just driving us nuts as a team. What would we want to try next time to get better?
Yeah, like what is went good and what went wrong.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes. Also celebrate, hey, here's what we're doing right. Let's keep doing that. So we want that to be happening on the team level, whether you're Scrum or Kanban, you still should be having those feedback loops. But it's also, you want to have an occasional taught feedback loop where everyone is talking about the what is it, the universal issues that are occurring. Hey, we all get together and say, I'm struggling because I'm always dependent on this team, and maybe there's some problems there. We need to think about potentially reorganizing the team, or maybe adding additional process or so forth. What are some other conversations or points would you want to discuss potentially in a taught feedback loop?
Om mentions another practice could be consolidated sprint reviews or demos so stakeholders get how the product is evolving.
Absolutely. So in addition to saying, hey, how are we working together as a taught? What do we need to make different? We also want to have that feedback loop from that bigger, larger picture, right? If I'm just showing the client, each team, I'm showing, here's what we did, here's what we did. We really want to see that end-to-end integrated piece of functionality that we've built. And maybe it's every 2 weeks, maybe it's every sprint. Have a common cadence where you invite your stakeholders and your customers in to show them where you are. And why do we want to get feedback quickly from our customers or customer representatives? To improve what we're building, right? We make assumptions like, oh, I think this is going to work. I think this is what they had in mind. We want to verify it quickly to save time and money, so we're not building the thing wrong or the wrong thing. Excellent. So again, it sounds obvious, but you want to have clearly defined overarching goals. If you have all these speedboats, and they all are very intelligent and able and capable, and unless I have it very clearly, here is what we're trying to meet collectively as a taught. Hey, you could have your own little wiggle room, you know, there's some flexibility, but here's where we're aligned. I've worked with a lot of tots where there are certain teams who are just, they're in it just for themselves. Like, hey, we're the bomb.com, we're going to do whatever we want, and the hell with everybody else. And maybe they're doing awesome as a little component of that system, but when they adopt that, it really is called a sub-optimization. What's a sub-optimization, Danny?
Well, coming from the Latin for under, would be.
Oh, it does? It means, I never knew that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. See, there's the teamwork here, guys. But yeah, sub-optimization. Obviously, anything that's under the meat, right? Under the ask. So if it's not clearly defined, you risk going over too. You know, adding. That's where we go back to that waste conversation. But if it's suboptimal, then you don't meet the need in general because the definition was not clear enough.
Yeah, exactly. And to add on to that, when one team is optimizing their own desires and meeting their own goals, sometimes if it's suboptimal, it'll get to the point where it affects the entire taught, right? Yeah. So my quick example, I had this team, they were a UI team, they weren't cross-functional, and they were awesome. They had been together for a long, long time. And I think I've told this story before. Stop me if you've heard it. Anyway, they were just killing it, and they were cranking out this code and this UI stuff, and the backend team could not keep up. And we kept saying, hey, we need to work together with the backend team to integrate this stuff quickly, often, so we see what we're doing and we can actually show it to our customer and see if this is what they had in mind. And they refused, so they just kept doing that, piling up, and never got integrated. And
yeah, it's like the thing too, like a visualization for that too is like sub-optimization is also, there can be some erosion, right? Like when you're trying to get to a particular goal, if everything is coming up just under, then your foundation as to your overarching goal, you're getting further and further from it, right? Because it just recedes. You're not building on top of one thing after another. Everything just continues to lay low.
That's a good point. So you want to have, whether it be, you know, maybe there's a certain body at the top level that says, okay, defines these goals, not just business goals. Maybe it's your product owner who's defining those, and then communicating that often, having some place where anyone can go and say, oh, here's our future, here's our roadmap, here's the vision that he or she has set out. Also, our technical goals, right? Maybe we want to move everything to the cloud. Cool. Let's have somebody leading that charge and helping everyone else on the top understand that and be aiming towards it. Okay, now also maybe some top level working agreements. What do we mean by working agreements? So you might have team working agreements, right? Where or somebody, one of my students called it the rules of engagement, right? How we're going to show up when we're meeting, how we're going to deal with conflict, what we're going to do in a Zoom call, things like that. Call it out explicitly, write it down. Also, it might be beneficial in one of your taught events to come up with a list of working agreements. Hey, you know, what do we expect from other teams as far as interacting? What do we expect when we're working together as a taught versus working separately as individual teams? So, something like that.
Yeah. Angelina says, you know, something part of a working agreement could be the team agrees what is working product, you know.
Yes. Yes.
That's important. Everybody has to define clearly what that is for each other so that everybody's on the same page. And Sanjoy says team communication process. So, you know, if you don't have working agreements around that, you know, somebody, the logistics of working together, obviously there's a time and place for daily sync. That's part of your working agreement. But apart from that, those within the team, hey, between 10 and 11, I'm going to be working on what I need to focus on, and I'm not interested in collaborating, or I can't collaborate at that time. Meet me at 11:01. That kind of stuff can really help to streamline your tot as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you just have those at the team level, then you're still probably having people, oh, hey, let's talk, and get interrupted. So that would be awesome if you could do that at the top level. Also, back to, I think it was Angela, what you said, what does done look like when you are scaled? So a lot of times the team's like, hey, I checked my code in, I met all my sprint goals, so cool beans. But we want to make sure there's an agreement and understanding. We want things integrated as often as we possibly can. All the different teams are checking it in, they're running it collectively, they have a shared responsibility for the quality, not just one team versus another team. And that would be an awesome thing to define in a working agreement session. And then talked engineering practices. I'd like to get some feedback on that. So, you know, we say, hey, just let every team do what they want. Let them go self-organize. We really need to have a common thread, right? We're all working on the same code base. So if one team decides, oh, I want to do all this other stuff, it could potentially break it for another team. We want to have some kind of overarching methodology for how we're going to do our engineering, do the technical work. It doesn't mean every team has to do it identically, but you do have to have that common thread to keep things cohesive. And along that same line, some type of top-level design for our architecture. So when I talk about design, I guess I'm thinking maybe the UI UX design. So yes, every team, we want them to have some flexibility, but let's say you had a website and if every page had a different look and feel and different functionality, not that helpful, right? Not very user-friendly, so to speak. So there does need to be some high-level upfront design work that occurs and that everyone plugs into, as well as your, oh yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Om says coding standards across TOT.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. And then, like you said, maybe teams could collaborate better if they have the same methodology, right? We're going to do these certain comments, and makes it more sustainable, the code itself. And then as far as the architecture goes, kind of a similar thing where we do have those components that we share across, 5-6 teams, and there needs to be some upfront design work done on that as well. Not too much, obviously. We don't want to get back into waterfall where we're designing everything for a year and then it changes the next day. But there does need to have that thread of commonality. Any other thoughts on those two items?
Let's see, Angelina's got a few comments too. Yeah, same methodology and same tools, which are accessible by everyone in the team. And she also mentions too, before that clearly defined goal with set deadline, that members of the team agrees that everything is working and working in all perspectives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, thank you. That, Angelina, very good. Agreed. That is so crucial to eating any type of success in a scaled environment. Very important. And then this actually, Angelina already answered this, top level definition of done, right? What does done look like? And let's make sure we agree it, not just within the technical teams, but all around the top with our product owner, maybe even the customer representatives or customers that we have. So we're not like surprised at the end when they didn't get what they expected and we said, well, it wasn't in the requirements, right? We don't want to have that type of a relationship with our customers. All right, any other thoughts? I'm curious if you guys have some practices that you think would be important to potentially add to your scaled talk.
Jill, it kind of goes back to yesterday we were talking about having a strategy or a vision, and then you have a team, and then epic, and then how you're breaking down the user stories. So I'm assuming this scale agile kind of takes a step back, and so it's at the strategy or the vision level for the whole team, and then so that's the vision is that that's where the design and architecture you were talking about, and then having different teams work on different pieces of the in a strategy. It may not be a project, it might be different projects that are working towards it. And this makes a lot of sense that having the working agreement with across the team saying that, hey, we're all working towards this end vision that we have. It might be an immediate end vision for the end of the quarter, end of the year, whatever it is, but this makes sense. Having that clearly defined overarching goals is all these made a lot of sense to me.
Yes, thank you, Harsh. I like that, where we have this umbrella, like here's this overarching goal, and then it kind of gets broken down, not just from the business product owner's perspective, but also from a technical perspective and other ideas that we're always aligning those to that bigger picture and keeping all the pieces in place. So that is just some general advice. Oh, sorry, before we jump into that, any other thoughts on additional practices that we missed we might want to add? Angelina, your daughter's so cute. All right, so okay, we're doing good on time. So I'm not going to talk exhaustively about the frameworks that are out there and available. There is a point where some of them are awesome. It's like, okay, I could, incrementally do this on my own, but it doesn't hurt to know a lot about the frameworks that are already available, but that have been tested and proven to work. So I like to be very familiar with different frameworks, not just scaled. So then I have all these things in my tool belt where, okay, well, we're doing safe and it's awesome, but this piece isn't working. Oh, you know what? I learned in this other training class that you could do this instead. Oh, cool. Now we're going to kind of massage and modify our process to fit us better. So if you look out at the version 1, every year they do this State of Agile where they interview a bunch of people, or not interview, sorry, they survey a bunch of people and then collect the data. And it's interesting to see. So this is just based on their survey data. You can see which frameworks are the most popular. So what's the biggest one according to this little graph?
I think it's safe to say it's safe.
I think it is safe to say that. Thank you.
But
yes. So SAFE has a pretty big market share in the scaled community. The Scrum of Scrums, which they are now calling Scrum at Scale, is pretty big. And I thought this was interesting, that the 28%, almost the same amount as the people who are using SAFE, is I don't know or other. So maybe that's just
soon
the
to
top.
be. Yeah, yeah.
Taughting it. They're taughting it. So I just want to talk a little bit about what I would call the big three. So actually, let's have a conversation rather than me yapping. I'm getting tired of talking, Danny.
Hang in there.
So let's start on the right-hand side. And I want pros and cons from everybody. This is a safe space. Just be respectful. So SAFE, we teach these classes, actually I do for NextUp Solutions, and I've worked with a lot of groups to implement SAFE. And it really, in my experience, it was extremely helpful, and it really helped them align and produce better increments of value across the entire talk. So what is some perspectives on SAFE?
So I have a few. I think SAFE works really well in older or larger and more regulated industries. So places where they're pretty traditional and they're trying to make a move. It fits in really nice and really, and especially regulation, it helps a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. There is more. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it is the most prescriptive of the three you've got here. So if an organization is looking to adapt a framework, then they've got everything handed to them effectively through SAFE, is how to do things, right? The other two don't say that as much.
Absolutely, thank you. That is spot on. It does have a lot more, so there's more overhead, which can be great for, like you said, an organization who wants just out of the box, here's what you need to do. And maybe it's a transition period where, hey, we're gonna do SAFE for a couple of years. Okay, we get it. We're more agile, we're more I don't know, empowered, so to speak. And maybe we can start dropping some of those things where it makes sense and start if it becomes waste. But it's fantastic for that. There's so much guidance. Sometimes it's too much, but you don't have to do it all, right? I think it has some really good ideas that'll work. And the thing I like about all three of these, if you go to these websites, they have so much free information. Like you can just see the whole process and you can say, oh, maybe I'll try that, which is fantastic. And then if you want to learn more, it's awesome to take a training class as well. And then Scrum.
My understanding, sorry. I was just going to say, my understanding was, SAFE is very prescriptive, like Om said, but Scrum at scale for me has worked with, we've introduced all these teams to Scrum and they kind of organically come together. Like, it's like either the Scrum Masters come together or the product owners come together. And it's almost like, it's kind of homegrown, and it started off as a grassroots event, like all these other different teams doing Scrum, and then they all kind of came together, and the leadership team are like putting it together. That's what I think of it as.
Oh, Harsha, thank you. I like that. That sounds so nice, and a lot less, you say, top down potentially. Yeah, a little lighter weight, the Scrum at scale. This was developed by Jeff Sutherland, I believe. And the only thing I don't like, they have the dumbest names, like Scrum and Scrum and Scrum and Scrums. Scrum and Scrums, right?
Scrums.
Chief product owner. But other than that, it's fairly nice, and you can download. It's about, I think, a 20-page document if you're interested. And it walks you through the different suggested for new additional roles, and then Harsha, like you said, how you could potentially build this up as time goes by. And then this guy on the left-hand side, LESS. What is LESS? Who has ever used LESS before? Large-scale Scrum.
I've used parts of it.
What parts have you used, Brian?
Like having a chief product owner. I've done the combined sprint planning, usually just for like smaller, I would say moderate, like in between, like we've got some teams and they already have kind of a really good relationship with each other. They just need to add a little bit more.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is, in my opinion, this is probably one of the lightest weight scaled frameworks. So a little bit different where they don't suggest you adding additional roles, like somebody to coordinate stuff for the whole backlog. It's one product owner is working with potentially 5 different teams. It sounds to me awesome in theory. But again, like you said, they would already have to really have a good understanding, the teams, of the actual product. So they're not constantly, oh, product owner, how do you want this? Otherwise, it wouldn't be sustainable. I like it because it's so lightweight, and it really puts the onus and the assumption that the teams are going to step up, and the Scrum Master is going to work together to collaborate across the whole tot. Any other thoughts? And that this is, doesn't have, what is it, 3% of people are using this, but there's a lot of buzz around it in the Agile world. It is an interesting framework. And again, if you go to their website, it's awesome. You click on all these little things and it will show you different descriptions and suggestions. And it really gets into the systems level thinking. If you take any of these trainings, that's a big chunk of it, is learning how to function as a system and getting those different components interacting together better so you can make better decisions. All right, anything else on the scaled frameworks that are out there that we might want to investigate or that you've had experience with?
I just want to pass a comment here that although these are columns here, it doesn't mean you need to just work with one. For example, in a safe environment, Scrum at Scale can work as well. So it requires a little bit more maturity in the teams, but you're not tied to one necessarily organization-wide.
Thank you. That is such a good point. I teach that as well. Like, hey, if we're doing safe and we say, hey, we don't want to take 2 full days to do our planning, then I say, okay, well then don't do that. I promise the safe police won't come and get you. You will be safe. You will be safe from safe. Yes, do what works best. I mean, maybe start doing as prescribed for a while and then start to lighten it up if you can. Or like you said, blend the three. Hey, this is a cool thing from Kanban. Let's use this here. That's, to me, that's when you're truly being agile, when you're doing, you got your tool belt and you use some different techniques to achieve things. And keep experimenting, right? It's not like, okay, we're done, we have our process. You want to keep trying new things to see if you can make your lives easier and you can be more productive. Other perspectives?
So Angelina had a question here, Jill. She says, what is Scrum Agile then? Is Scaled Agile the same as Scrum Agile? If not, what is Scrum Agile?
What is Scrum Agile? I don't know what that is. I think maybe, let me make sure I understand the question. So there's Agile, like they say in the old country. And that's just a set of principles and values, right? If you go to agilemanifesto.org, you can read that. And then they've created some frameworks that basically is more procedures and processes and potential roles to help you actualize those values. So unless I'm misunderstanding, so you got Agile here is the foundation. That's better hand gestures. And then you have SAFE would be an implementation of those. I mean, not sorry, Scrum. And then a lot of the scaled frameworks, you'll find that Scrum framework is a big part of the scaled as well. Teams often will be doing Scrum, and it's kind of like a larger global version of Scrum that serves as a wrapper around the entire tot. Did that answer your question, Angelina?
I don't know. Yeah, Angelina, did that cover the bases there? Oh, I got it. Yeah, she said, yep. And she does have the Agile Manifesto, so we're good.
Cool beans.
Yeah, thanks, Angelina.
Thanks. So essentially, not just in frameworks, any other questions? We have 5 more minutes. Let's chat. Let's talk. Or suggestions. What has worked for you? I love to hear other people's perspectives and experiences, because it's like, you've only been doing this for 20 years. Like, oh, that's awesome. I never even thought of that. Thank you for sharing.
So for me, this is Brian, I'll go ahead. I think the thing that works the best for me is to, and maybe it's just me, but I view everything as like a toolkit anyway. And like, what's the problem, where we are, what are you trying to solve? Here's some ways to solve that problem. With the scaling, don't just do something to do it.
Oh, I like that. Like that's the first thing what are we trying to solve? Or just rather than, hey, let's do all this scaling stuff because Jill said it was awesome. Let's figure out.
That's good. That's usually good enough.
Well,
but outside of that.
Nice.
Start with the why, as Simon Sinek says, right? Start with the why. Why do you want to scale? And then
Yes.
really get to the bottom of that. And don't get hung up on this framework versus that, because to Brian's point, find the right fit for the problem at hand.
Absolutely. We are so aligned on
Aligned.
aligned.
Yeah.
What other thoughts, questions, observations, jokes?
So of the three, less is more kind of more geared towards solving organizational changes. If you wanted to change structurally within your organization, less lends itself nicely to that, as opposed to, say, SAFE, which I think is the other end of the spectrum, with predefined roles, lots of roles. And in today's climate, that might actually be a barrier to entry, because budgets are thin now. And if you want to set up a whole bunch of release trains in SAFE, now you need to hire big time. Whereas if you adopt something like less, or even Scrum at scale, for instance, you're already doing Scrum. It's a natural extension.
Mhm.
So that's what I would say. Just think about that, right? Do you have the budget to set up SAFE from start to finish? Or is it better to just start with something that you're already doing if you're practicing Scrum, and scale that up and see how it goes? You may find you don't need to go to a much more elaborate framework.
Potentially, yes, absolutely. So yeah, yes, SAFE more respects the current hierarchy, and you kind of work around that, which is good for, like Brian said, these big older companies. I think that fits really well. Where less is like, okay, dude, like the guy who invented less won't even come in and work with a group unless they're willing to like reorg everything and change things, because that will make it work better. So thank you all for sharing. What else? So quiet. Danny, what do you think? What do you think about all this malarkey?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest takeaway is, and I think what the comments just made too, is having the right tool at the right time, and to focus on Angelina's point, which is that we're if Agile being the umbrella, if we're starting from Scrum, it's a great spot, but you don't want to use a screwdriver to hammer to knock a nail in a board, right? So being able to try these different frameworks and having the permission, like you said, Jill, that you can pivot away from something if it's not working. You don't have to. These principles are meant to be used in a way that's intuitive and in a helpful way, right?
Exactly. I think this is going to be the takeaway, this picture here, right? This is what I'm hearing, this common theme. Find the shirt that fits. Maybe we all have different bodies. Find the one that fits your body. Is that good? No. Or fit your team and fit your team of teams. How's that? All right. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure as always. I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about retrospectives.
Yeah. So, and I got noticed that my my audio went funky there, so I apologize.
It was scary. It was scary.
Yeah, sorry.
The voice of God.
That's right. But yeah, my apologies for that. In the chat window here, as Jill mentioned at the beginning, we do have public trainings in NextUp, and we are currently doing all of our trainings virtually, public trainings virtually until at the end of September 1st. What I've dropped in
September 1st is that it keeps changing. Like every day, it's like you never know what's going to happen with the COVID.
Yep. So we at NextUp Solutions ourselves, we're very agile, and given the circumstances surrounding COVID-19, have been adjusting as we learn more and as we are trying to solve the problem of what it looks like to reopen. But our virtual trainings are open and open to the public. I have the website in the chat box there, but also you'll see our upcoming webinars listed in there as well. But I'm going to drop in the next webinar, a link to the next webinar, which is going to be myths and misunderstandings that kill Agile in government. So anyone who's interested in working in the government.
I'm excited. This is going to be by Patrick, and he's worked in government forever. He is an expert at it. I highly, if you work in government or with government, I highly suggest you attend that on the 26th.
Yeah, so that'll be a week from today, but yeah, and we're available if you have any questions. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can contact us at info@nextupsolutions.com, which I'm also putting in the chat there, available to everyone. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding training, or if you'd like to just learn more about NextUp Solutions.
I will be putting Danny's cell phone in the chat as well. You can call him anytime, day or night.
And we're happy to talk about things that unrelated to Agile and Scrum and Scaled Agile, movie reviews, different.
Just call you at midnight. Hey, what's some good movies that you watch, Danny?
But no, we thank you all for joining us, and you're a great crowd, and hopefully we see you at one of our future webinars or trainings.
A lovely
Thanks,
weekend,
Danny.
everybody.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your
Thank you.
holiday today.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Take care now.
Thank you. Hey, Danny, wouldn't it be cool if our boss said, hey, since it's a holiday, you guys can have the rest of the day off? Oh, did he already? Oh, he's still on. Okay.
Oh, he's still, yeah, that's right.